Before the start of the 2024 college football season, we all thought that Miller Moss was going to be the next big thing for USC. After putting on a crazy performance in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, Miller Moss looked like the next big thing for the Trojans, and a guy who could go off to the NFL after just 1 year in Lincoln Riley's system. He was highly touted coming out of high school, had that crazy bowl game, and also looked the part of being the next great quarterback. But sadly, as we now approach the end of the 2024 college football regular season, USC has fallen on hard times and officially has been benched in favor of Jaden Maiava. In today's video, I want to talk about what went wrong for Miller Moss. We're to go back in time and talk about how he became a 4-star blue chip recruit to begin with, why he got so much hype at USC, and ultimately what the heck has gone wrong for him in 2024. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Miller Moss. Moss was born in Santa Monica, California in 2002, and while he didn't necessarily come from a sports family, he did come from a family with a lot of success in other areas. His dad, Eric, was a well-known architect in the Los Angeles area who owns his own architecture firm, and it's named after him. Miller was born when his father was almost 60 years old, which is kind of crazy. His mom taught architectural design at USC before eventually joining his dad's company. The best way to put it is that Miller comes from an architecture royalty family, which makes his decision to play football that much more interesting. Growing up, Miller was a huge USC fan thanks to his parents' background, and he grew up watching guys like Matt Leinart, Carson Palmer, and Matt Barkley, and that really shaped his dreams for the future significantly. His dad was a youth coach for soccer who helped build a desire to win early on. As Miller said, quote, "We would play soccer and my dad would put me at center forward and say go score, and I go score 7 goals or something like that. And other teams' moms would come up to my dad after the game and get really upset because Timmy was crying because he lost by 8 goals or something." So that was honestly one of the best things that ever happened to me because we eventually had to move on from playing in the neighborhood and it let me be able to play against better competition. But soccer didn't end up being his future and neither did basketball, to his mom's disappointment. It was always football for Miller. He was a talented young quarterback for Loyola High School in Los Angeles for his freshman year and then eventually chose to transfer to Bishop Alamé for his sophomore year to be coached by Casey Clausen, the former Tennessee quarterback. Miller felt as if he didn't get the opportunities to succeed and grow at Loyola after their head coach took an assistant job at Coastal Carolina, and the direction of the program was kind of a mystery. Alamany had been a bad football program in the years before Coach Clausen and Miller got there, and they almost redid the entire roster. His sophomore year in 2018, Moss threw for 2,700 yards with 19 touchdowns and 14 picks, and they improved from 3-7 to 7-5, and Miller grew as a leader. He started to help with recruiting other high school players to join the team, like future USC receivers Jalen Smith and Kevin Green Jr. Coach Clausen said, quote, "He did develop our program. He was the one. We can't run a program regardless of what level we're at without a quarterback, and he was the guy that helped put our program on the map." Alamany would eventually improve to 9-3 the next season in 2019, with Miller completing 67% of his passes for 3,100 yards and 28 touchdowns. Despite having a really good career as a quarterback, he really wasn't getting noticed by higher level programs. He said, quote, "During my freshman year, I was pretty frustrated because Tyler Buckner is one of my good friends and his recruitment had blown up. You saw Jake Garcia's recruitment take off and I only had an offer from San Jose State." It wasn't until the 2019 high school football season, though, that he started to get a lot of attention. Before the year started, he stacked tentative offers from Michigan, NC State, Bama, and UCLA. After the 2020 season, though, he started to appear on a lot of teams' radars. He added offers from Miami, Oregon, LSU, Tennessee, and Penn State, and also other schools were pushing hard for him. He said, quote, "When Tua got drafted, Coach Saban called me and said, 'I can't wait to do this with you in 4 years.'" But Miller didn't feel comfortable with his list until he added an offer from his childhood favorite team, USC. But even while he had 4 schools listed on his top 4, LSU, Bama, USC, and UCLA, Miller always thought back to those USC quarterbacks he grew up watching and knew there was just one school he wanted to go to. Former USC offensive coordinator Graham Harrell said, quote, "The great thing about Miller the whole time was, he said, 'Coach, I don't care who you sign. I'm a Trojan. I'll compete with anyone.' That's the kind of guy you want." The summer before his senior year in 2020, Miller made it official and committed to the Trojans, and the deciding factor was his close relationship with then head coach Clay Helton. After he made his decision to commit to USC, though, Miller decided he'd also be on the move as he transferred to highly touted Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California, which is known for producing high-caliber quarterbacks, a lot of whom went to USC. He was hoping to become the next Matt Leinart, Matt Barkley, or Bryce Young, who had just signed with Bama. The problem was that because of everything going on in the world, Mater Dei ended up having to cancel their football season, so Miller didn't even get a chance to put together a senior season's worth of tape for the Trojans coaches to look at. He said, quote, "I think me not having an opportunity to play at Mater Dei might have been one of the best things to happen to me, just in the sense I never had the opportunity to get comfortable. That kind of reestablished a chip I had on my shoulder, and I felt the need to prove myself, and I think that's one of the best things for me. He ended up finishing his high school career rated as a 4-star recruit in the class of 2021, and he was the 112th overall recruit in the entire country, the 9th in the state of California, and the 15th best quarterback recruit overall, in front of guys like Kyron Drones, Garrett Nussmeier, and Donovan McCulley. He decided he'd graduate and enroll early at USC, in time for spring practices. He'd eventually enter a locker room at USC that had just lost JT Daniels to Georgia and Jack Sears to Boise State, but it looked like he was going to come in and sit behind incumbent starter Keaton Slovis, who had just beaten out JT for the starting job. Miller was outspoken in the fact that he wasn't intimidated by Keaton being a year older than him and having all that success he did. He'd also be joined alongside another quarterback, Jake Garcia, who's actually rated higher than him, but that wouldn't end up being a problem, as Jake would then end up flipping to Miami. What did become a problem though was that USC also brought in Jackson Dart to replace Garcia in their signing class. Once he got to USC, he was instantly placed on the bench and was in a quarterback battle with Jackson Dart to win the backup duty. Because Miller's senior high school season was canceled, Jackson's wasn't, and this gave him a leg up. He was essentially a year and a half behind his teammate in terms of being ready, and that is a problem in college football. There were some worries he was not picking up college offenses as fast as he needed to, with him saying, quote, "That learning curve was steeper than I expected. I expected to come in here and pick it up where I left off, and I don't think that was a realistic expectation." He'd ended up taking a redshirt season, only managing to find the field in 2 games. In those 2 games, he threw for just under 74 yards and a touchdown, while Jackson clearly took over as the backup once Slovis was injured against Washington State. Dart found the field in 6 games, throwing for 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 5 picks, and setting Miller behind yet another year. What made it even worse for Miller was that USC had gone 4-8 that year and fired the coach that brought him in. They brought in Lincoln Riley to be their next head man, and Lincoln was bringing with him superstar quarterback Caleb Williams, and he was now going to be even further down the depth chart. It didn't get better in 2022. As while USC improved immediately to an 11-3 record, Miller was once again on the bench for most of the season. Jackson left for Ole Miss in the portal and was replaced by Williams, who was an even better quarterback than Dart was. Miller never had a chance to compete for the starting job because Caleb was Riley's guy. He ended up finding playing time as a backup in 5 games, throwing for just 159 yards and a touchdown during the latter parts of those blowouts, while Caleb ended up winning that year's Heisman Trophy and pretty much every award he could have won. It wasn't until 2023 where there was some hope of him finding the field, as USC regressed to an 8-5 record in the final year of the Pac-12 Conference and brought in highly recruited quarterback Malachi Nelson. Despite all that, Miller stayed on as a backup, not giving up on his dream of one day starting for them. At the end of the year, Caleb Williams opted out of their bowl game against number 16 Louisville, and this is when Miller Moss got a chance. He said, quote, "I'm obviously excited about the opportunity, but I'm not going to make it more than it is. We have a game to prepare for and do everything we can to win it." He ended up doing more than his fair share, exploding for 372 yards, 1 interception, and 6 passing touchdowns against a team that had just lost the ACC championship. He led them to a 42-28 victory and pretty much sealed his shot at the starting job for the 2024 season. After the game was over, Malachi Nelson hit the transfer portal and ended up at Boise State, signifying that Miller Moss was the guy of the future. He'd been patient and waited for his turn, and it was now paying off. Well, how is the 2024 season going so far for him? Well, not all that great, but it really can't be seen as his fault. For starters, Lincoln Riley isn't that great of a coach, and his offensive coordinator Josh Henson isn't all that great either. The Trojans are 4-5 with their first year in the Big Ten, but Miller has still thrown for 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 picks, but as of recently, it's been announced that he's been giving up his starting job to UNLV transfer Jaden Mayava. I don't think Miller leaves USC, even if Lincoln is fired at the end of the year. I think it's really likely he ends up staying in Los Angeles and graduating from USC. Maybe he takes a grad transfer year to play somewhere else, but even after the flash he had in the Holiday Bowl, it really hasn't worked out for him at USC. I'm not really quite sure what has necessarily gone wrong, as I don't think Moss has necessarily been that bad this year. Maybe they're just trying to change things up, maybe they think Mayava will fit the system better, or maybe they're just trying to throw something and see if it sticks because they're desperate to make a bowl game and Lincoln's desperate to keep his job. I have no idea, but after Miller Moss had that crazy performance, he was hyped up as the next big thing and has now been benched, and it's kind of a weird story. I hope I wasn't too negative in this one, as I still do think Miller Moss has a future, but we'll sort of just have to wait and see. Except, what do you guys think? If you're a USC fan, why was Miller Moss benched? Why hasn't he worked out? And what does the future look like for the Trojans at the quarterback position? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.